Here's where we left off last time, and this time we're going to build up the wheels. This is probably the blingiest part of this bike. WeAre1 Union rims laced to Onyx Classic hubs. I'm really psyched about these, and they did come pre-taped, which is nice. Seating the front tire tubeless was a pretty straightforward process. Working around the tire, I got the rubber onto the rim using a tire lever to secure that final bit. Next, I removed the valve core. I got this air shot can, which basically allows you to push a bunch of air into the tire really quickly to make seating the bead easier. So I connected that, pumped it up with air, and then opened the gate to inflate the tire. I ended up doing that twice, but that seated it pretty much perfectly. Then it was time to put in the sealant. I got this kit from Stan's and quickly learned the hard way that sealant is basically impossible to remove from these mechanic gloves that I love. I also realized later that I hadn't put enough sealant in here, so I did go back and add some more later. Once the sealant's in, all that's left to do is reinsert the valve core and pump the tire up. Once it's inflated to your desired pressure, you do the new tire dance, and you're pretty much good to go. With the rear tire, I wanted to include this Panzer Evo tire insert. How much harder could that make things? Much harder, as it turns out. The process is basically the same, but after getting the insert in, I could not get the tire fully onto the rim. What you're seeing right now is the video at 20 times speed. I tried various tips and tricks, I brought my wife in for help. No dice, nothing worked. Finally, and shamefully, I took it to Gorham Bike and Ski to have them get that last quarter of the tire onto the rim, which they did. Once that was set, it was time to put on the cassette. This is an SLX cassette going onto a micro-spline driver, and the way it fits on is really straightforward. The only real challenge is making sure that the loose cogs and their spacers go on in the correct order. The final cog is also pretty easy to mess up, so double check to make sure that it's even all the way around before you tighten the cassette down. When everything's all set, you screw on the lock ring and then tighten it with a cassette tool. And once again, I'm torquing this to pretty tight spec. It's all very official. Finally, it was time to put the rotors on using these fancy titanium bolts I bought for some reason. Again, this is really straightforward stuff, although you are supposed to tighten them in a star pattern to ensure that they're even, and then torque them down to spec. The next video will be the last build video, covering the brakes and my subsequent surrender. But don't forget, we'll also be doing a bike check and a price check video where I talk about all of the various parts, what I paid for them, and how things went in terms of my goal of building a no compromises budget baller bike. So stay tuned.